is Rocky with Rocky, and you're into Motor City Woman Radio. Music, relationships, life, black culture.
Or should I just say culture?
Right, all that pretty much. More music, educating and entertaining, more black businesses, just more. More me just being me. Sometimes it might get a little 7-Eleven like Beyonce. You can follow Rocky's Reality on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Rocky's Reality is now 2 full hours of unfiltered and unapologetic conversation. Hey, welcome to Rocky's Reality. Excited. Oh, you came on right on time, Sean. Look at that. Right on time.
Big fella.
Welcome, guys. I'm really excited. First of all, let me say thank you for being not being the stereotypes, for being upstanding men in your community, for being husbands, fathers, shifting the narrative. So I really I'm glad that you all are here. Welcome. I'm really excited. Kwame, we've been knowing each other since elementary school. He claimed I beat him up, but that's lies. That's lies. Sean, I'm glad to meet you. And I'm always excited when I can see our people doing things. I always like to shine a light on that. So I just want to applaud you, brothers, for doing what you do in the community and with your families and being an example and showing other young brothers, other families, and you know, your children, and just being an example, because that's very important that we see people like us out here actually, as your sign says behind you, Sean, hustling, executing, and grinding. So I certainly appreciate you all. I wanted to have this conversation because I saw the live that you all did with the 3 white men. I want to say, was that about 3-4 weeks ago now? Oh, I think you're on mute, Sean.
Yes, I'm on mute. I'm on mute.
Right, I see you got your microphone. Look at you.
I think Kwame did that. I think Kwame muted me. I think he muted me.
Never.
Did you mute me?
Never.
Let me remind you all right quick, if I can ask, share the Rocky's Reality, if you can, on the Facebook page. Share that to your Facebook pages, please. Share the live, go to the Rocky's Reality Facebook page and share that live to your personal pages if you can, because I really like to get some of your viewers and audience, because you all both have a significant following, and I definitely would like to get them in on this conversation.
What's the page? I wanna make sure I do it. What's the page am I gonna share it on?
Yeah, well, on your personal page.
Yeah, but where on what's yours? Just on the Rocky Harris?
No, go to Rocky's Reality, ROCKI' Reality.
We want to make sure we get this out.
Right, exactly, because this we about to have a great conversation. So it's definitely something that needs to reach the masses.
Okay, I'm sharing it now.
Okay, so welcome to everyone listening and watching. I have Mr. Sean Hart of Involved Dad, author, speaker, trainer, coach, Michigan State grad, unfortunately.
Let's get that work.
I had to get that out the way. I know you and Kwame have some interesting conversations since he's a patriot. We wanted to talk about that a little later, about your boy Tom Brady. That's your boy, not mine, because I don't even understand.
He's a Michigan guy. Come on, Raphael. He's a Michigan guy.
You said what?
He's a Michigan guy.
Yeah, he is, but I don't understand him leaving the Patriots. But I know it's politics and all type of stuff up in sports. But also, Sean, you've worked with so many companies. I don't have your bio right in front of me, but just give me a short blurb of who you are. Right, like we don't need to do the formal.
Yo, let's get this work. Let's get this work. People can go. They can go on Google. They Google me.
Right. But tell me about Involved Dad right quick though. I was about dads who are involved, and I really love that. And last year I did a show on the importance of fatherhood. I don't know if you all are familiar with Calvin Mann of encouraged me while I'm young. I believe his organization is, and he has an organization similar to yours where he supports dads.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about your Involved Dad in organization.
Yeah, Involved Dad. We was founded in 2015. And when that was during the time when I was working in the prison system, Michigan Department of Corrections. And I just saw how so many men, especially that looked like me, were incarcerated, right? And the one thing that a lot of them had in common was that their father was not present. And I had some of my own issues, right? So instead of me complaining, I wanted to be part of a solution. So that's when I founded Involved Dad, where we equip, train, and develop men, right? Our motto, our mission is to create strong families. And the way that we do that is through fatherhood engagement. So we help organizations and nonprofits, governmental agencies on how to create strong families by integrating the father into that dynamic. So that whole little dyad.
Yep. And very important, because I'm a child welfare trainer. That's my 9 to 5. And I always preach to my trainees that do not discount our dads.
Yeah,
like
for real.
We need the kids need their dads as much as they need their mama.
For real.
Sometimes I have seen dads who are more nurturing and attentive and supportive to their children than moms. Like,
for real.
I know you all as husbands at times you come and rescue your wives. Like, I've had those moments where I'm going nuts and hubby comes in like, okay. So we definitely appreciate Involved Dad and all you do, and I'm glad that you're extending, you're using your influence also to keep the conversation going about life as a Black man in America, pretty much.
Yeah,
Black in America and what we do. So let me move on to Kwame, educational consultant. Y'all see you got the Simmons advantage on.
Right,
so
right.
And Mr. BET Award winner. Y'all, did you get a BET Award, Kwame, a few years back?
I did.
Right. They flashed the camera on you for like 7 seconds. I'm like,
we were never quiet in class. So yes, you're right. I think before I even say anything, I think Sean is very humble and not really giving himself a fraction of the due that he deserves. I think one, the development of Involved Dads, I think is very unique. You really don't find organizations led by Black men really pushing and driving Black men to be who they are, but then advocating for them. Like in every single space that he steps in, he's advocating for fathers to have equitable opportunities to be parents, while at the same time holding them accountable to high standards to be dads. Right. And I think, iron only sharpens iron. So I think that's something that I always look at and am motivated by when I see Sean working, because he's always on fire for parents and keeping households together. So, I just wanted to make sure I plugged him on that, because, people like to see like, oh, I want the shirt. I like his shirt. He's got some fly stuff, but they're not there on Tuesdays, right? When he's sitting there late at night, when somebody might be crying, or they just left the court and they said that, because they owe $15, they got a warrant out for their arrest. And it's like, are you serious, man? I'm telling you, for $15, I'm telling you, like
I believe it. The system is stacked against. I absolutely believe it. And going back a little bit, Calvin Mann, his organization is Good Fathers Only, and he does the same thing. Dads who have issues with custody, and I believe it. The $15 is ridiculous, because to be honest, I'm gonna be honest. The system is stacked against men and dads. It is. It's unfair. So I'm glad that you're doing that work, because, like you said, it's more than just a T-shirt. It's the moments when you having to pat a dad on the back and assure him to keep going, because trying to get custody, child support, all of that straightened out is a very frustrating process.
Yep.
It will. I have seen, like you said, dads break down and cry like I give up, and then people think on the outside that the dad is not trying to do anything, when really it's like you get tired of going down to the Coleman City County building or whatever municipal building in your county. So Thank you. Yeah.
I appreciate that, Kwame.
Yeah, no doubt. So so the work I do as an educational consultant is really to do strategic planning for school districts around how do you do school improvement. So I spent all of my time, pretty much all of my adult life, working in really tough schools from Detroit, St. Louis, and DC, trying to be a voice for the voiceless. So people lots of times kind of discount or discredit families who are in poverty and just write them off.
Yeah.
So I really work hard to bring some like world-class information into those settings to fight for equitable, competitive options for families. So that's that work around the strategic planning and then leadership development. So the types of leaders that are going to go into those schools, do they have the kind of information to ensure that their intent is realized with their impact? You know, and Raquel, we talked about that. And then the last one is near and dear to my heart. My oldest brother has a disability and has had one his entire life. And I've seen my dad and his mom work with him with the same expectations that the rest of us had. And that was for him to set up. And my oldest brother, you know, is so independent. He probably knows the Detroit transit system better than anybody that I know. I mean, he could probably work for DOT. He knows well. So very much independent. So the last piece of the business is around workforce development for high school students with disabilities, right? To ensure that they get really great options during, after high school, so that they can realize their best selves.
I love it. I love it. Yes, because our teens are a forgotten population too. And I worked with a lot of teens in foster care, and a lot of times they would age out. And I'm not going to lie, teens are not my favorite population because, you know, they know everything. Lord, you know, I'm dealing with the 16-year-old blues now. But you just reminded me of when, shout out to Danielle North. She said you all have worked together. I was at
hey, what's up, Danielle?
Yeah, I was at Northern High School back in, this was before shutdown, so this was like February. I went there for their career day, and I was so inspired, Kwame, by those kids. Like I mean, y'all know they got the internet now, so these kids are just phenomenal. They were just the visions that they had. So I'm glad that you, and we'll definitely get to that educational piece because we'll have to get to a little bit about about the schools reopening. So I'm sure you're going to be quite busy or are busy with these schools reopening. I don't even know how to feel. I'm feeling very conflicted. I want to get my kids out the house, but I don't want it at the risk of their safety.
That's right.
So
and you should.
So for, again, I wanted to have this conversation with you all because I saw the conversation you all had with the 3 white men about 3 weeks ago. It was shortly after the George Floyd incident. And it's not just, as we all know, it's not just George Floyd. He was just the latest sacrifice in this ongoing battle. And I'm really someone who tries to shift the narrative about what's happening in our community and talking about some actionable changes. And I think a part of that is educating people on certain perspectives. So I wanted to elaborate more on what life is like for Black men in America. Because it essentially, in a way, you all have, it seems like, become an endangered species in a way, because it's like, any move that you make is so measured, is so monitored. And just with my husband, with me raising a son, I have anxiety about having to talk with him. Because my baby, our babies are not suburban babies. They're not from the hood like us. So they don't really realize a lot of the ills that are out there. And not that I've sheltered them, but like my baby, he's 9. He really does not realize and understand why things are the way they are. Why white people don't like him because of his skin color. Why, as a Black boy, he has to behave differently than a little white boy. And these are things that he's already seen evidence of in going to school and being suspended himself, and having teachers who, as you said, Kwame, the one teacher don't know how to channel that energy. So I wanted to ask first, in short, and I'll start with Sean. For you, what is it like being a Black man in America? Like, I know what it's like being a Black woman, but and I can possibly, grasp from what my husband shows me and the struggles that he goes through, because it's at times he'll be at work and I can just tell when he gets home that he's had a heavy day, that something has happened, and is connected and added on to his frustration because he has to move differently as a Black man.
Yeah.
Starting with Sean, I want to talk about that, and then later I do want to also, I don't know, you all got to read Ice Cube's plan for Black America. It's like a 7 or 8 page manifesto with about 6 categories talking about in education, in financial reform, prison reform. He has housing, healthcare. He has different categories, and in each one he has several bullet points where he's stating what he believes should happen in America. But first, let's start again going back to Sean. Talk to me a little bit about where you are now with being a Black man in America and just your perspective on all that's going on, and how do you think we can move forward and have some actual change?
Man, that's a whole lot of stuff there.
I know, just pick the pieces you remember. I know sometimes.
Yeah, no, it's all good, but I'm just saying that, it's just a lot to unpack there, right? I mean, because the truth be told, like if we're going to be transparent, right? I had to create a reality for myself that I would have as less blows as possible. Right? I had to create. So one of the things that I had to create a world where I didn't want to have to work for somebody, right? Because now I have to leave my house as much. I'm now interacting with certain people or situations. So now I'm in the line of fire a lot more.
Yeah.
Right. So one of the things I had to do is like, if I want to survive and move from surviving to thriving, is that I need to create my own reality and incubate myself with a support system, people, thinkers like me, people that will hold me accountable. Like I had to create my own world, right? I mean, and that only came out of traumas and me like, I don't want that. So if I don't want
trauma, like seeing violence, what do you mean when you say trauma?
When I say trauma, I'm talking about, violence or, like, being in the workplace of experiencing, unfair treatment, being marginalized or, all of those things. I'm like, I don't like that. Right. I mean, and you are trying to make me become somebody who I'm not. Right. Like I'm that kid that loves to smile. I'm that kid who loves to have a great time. So now every time I come into your environment, I got to put on a mask and I got to have a scowl on my face, or I have to. That's too much. That's a whole lot of. So when you ask that question, as if for me, one of the things I had to do was try to create my own reality, right? But I realized in creating my own reality of how I want my life to live, I didn't forget those who don't have those options or those opportunities, right? Because I can't help them if I can't first help myself. So the reason why I help fathers is because a lot of those dudes who are going through the circumstances and the situation with the system, they don't have a voice, right? They only know one speed. Right. They have to clap back. Right. So, I mean, my thing is like, and
they don't know the resources available to them.
Absolutely not. Like, I know how to play. I know how to play the game. I know how to play I know how to play it. I know how to speak, when I'm in this environment, and I know how to rock out when I'm in that environment. When I was in the prison, I knew how, to connect with the inmates, and then I knew how to connect with the administrators, right? And not all of them know how to do that. So when you say,
switch.
Absolutely.
We master that, don't we? Code switching, right?
Absolutely. I mean, so my thing is like, it's stressful, right? But at the same time, like you go through phases, man. You go through phases. Like right now, I'm cool. That a couple weeks ago when we had that conversation, that helped me because I was afraid. I was scared. I cried in front of my children. I had a conversation with my wife and my children about that. But that helped me to recoup. But I'm not outside of my house as much as I was before. I'm going to just keep it 100. I don't go out as much because I don't want to be in a line of fire.
And that's a shame. You have to feel as if you're a hermit. And going back to what you said about you created an environment where you could work for yourself. And that's one of the things that I know my husband and I have said too, like we need to work for ourselves because working for somebody else, dealing with bureaucracy, and as you said, the trauma of the microaggressions. And that's sad that we feel like we have to stay in our home. We shouldn't have to do that. We shouldn't have to do that. And that's something that makes me upset and angry that, well, we need to stay in the house anyway more because of COVID. But just the fact that you feel like, and I guess it's similar to how I feel when I drive in certain areas. Like
listen, Rocky, I was driving yesterday with my wife, like real talk. Like I was driving with my wife. We was going to pick up a car. This is yesterday here in Burton. We was heading to Grand Blanc. Kwame, I turned the corner. The cops seen me, bro. Right. So now I'm extra cautious. I'm not even stiff. Right. I'm just like, yo, just be relaxed. Don't, no sudden moves so he don't pull you over. So I'm driving, bro. He turns the corner. He's in the opposite lane. So I'm like, I'm straight. Don't you know this joker speeds up, shifts over to my lane, pulls directly behind me, like super, super, super close, right? Just tailing me, and then slows down, hop in his lane, and then get in the turn lane like he's going to leave. And so we at the light, and I'm looking, I'm kind of pissed. And I turn around, I'm like, really? And my wife is just like, Sean, don't say anything. Don't do anything. But, as a man, so I had to put pride aside. But I'm like, yo, number one, you trying to punk me in front of my wife. So I had to deal with that. Like, yo, you ain't no punk. So I had to deal with that. But I'm like, dude, that's not cool. Like, just because you have the ability, the power to do that, like, yo, why? Why do that? That's not cool, bro. For what?
Yeah. Just flexing for nothing.
For what? Right.
So Kwame, let me get your thoughts on this. Like, and I'm sure things have kind of calmed down, but that's why I want people, even though now we've calmed down from the initial fever of George Floyd, it's not stopped. That's my thing. And we have to remember, because sometimes we get cognitive dissonance and we forget actually how jacked up something is. And how we have to continually do the work, even when there's not an uproar that's happening. So we have to continually have these conversations to keep them top of the mind that this is shit that's still happening, that you can't even drive. And you know what, Sean, my husband and I had the same type issue sometimes when we're in the car and police, we do get stiff. Like my husband does get stiff because he's had an experience of being pulled over, of being when he was younger, had a run-in with the police and being thrown to the ground, them, 4 or 5 of them beating him at one time. So these are incidents that, and for me, I haven't had any traumas like that, but I have had times where I've been pulled over for a simple ticket and then another cop car pulls up. Why do you need 2 cop cars? Like, why? And it's just like that anxiety that we have. Again, like certain places I go, I don't even want to go. Like places like Livonia, Dearborn, Grosse Pointe, those are all, we were talking about this the other day, Kwame, how it's like a alarm goes off. You don't even want to go to these places. So is it similar for you, Kwame, where you don't even want to go out the house? I mean, thank God we have technology where we can work from home, but it's unsettling that we have to maneuver a certain way because white people aren't doing that. I'm sure none of those white guys that you all had on the other week ever think about, oh, I don't want to go out because I want to stay out of the line of fire.
Yeah, I would say, I would say it's impacting me, but in a different way. Like I kind of live with a spirit of like Nat Turner, Malcolm X. Like I like, you know, I like to smoke with white people. Like I really do, you know, because I like it as like a intellectual jousting, because I think they think we aren't smart enough to recognize what they do. So I think it's like different stages, right? So if you think about like it, you know, we from Detroit, so it's Motown. So, you know, welcome to Motown, Sean. So we're gonna just bring it to you. So, you know, if we thinking, you know, some R&B, some gospel, some hip hop, like all of that is in me, right? So, but when these situations around social justice come up, it's a lot more like gangster rap, right? So I'm a lot more Black Lives Matter every day when I'm on my walks through the neighborhood. I mean, that's before it was the Black Lives Matter where it's comfortable to do it now.
Trendy.
I think like I was just telling, and I agree with Sean though, in the sense that now my wife is the same way. Like she like just chill, you know, you don't have to have that same shirt on every time you going out. You know, they be getting scared. Like, don't do that. You know what I'm saying? But the fact that she even has to have the conversation with me about like somebody's getting scared, like, what are you getting scared about? Like, it's this constant, like, check yourself and monitor who you are at all times. And that's stressful. So, you know, so I would say yes. At times like this, you are more heightened about your presence. And what I say is, because of the spaces that, you know, Sean and I are in the majority of the time, it's a how close are you standing to a white woman, right? Is she going to say that you were, you know, intimidating her? You tried to touch her in some kind of inappropriate way. Like, you know, you hear these stories. And the thing that's the worst part to me though is how you have to temper your intellect to make them feel comfortable, right? So I call it like intellectual horsepower, right? Like, how high can I crank up my intellect and just be who I am, and be loud and be authentic with, you know, moving my hands. You start doing that and people are like, oh my God, like, you know, he has a gun, right? Like they start getting all kind of like scared.
Or he's angry.
And so I've just got to a point, I'm gonna be honest, like this last incident has gotten me more adamant about being and pushing for my being more authentic in every space that I walk in. Right. I'm like, you know what? I've been doing this a long time. If somebody don't really like who I am, then hey, just go get somebody else. So I'm much more like that. And you know, I'm not gonna lie, I had a situation, you know, wasn't with the police, but similar. I was just like a walking billboard. We in Costco just before, was it before the 4th? It might have been before the 4th. So we going, and I was just, you know, with the family, and my wife is on the other side, and I got, you know, 2 of our kids. We just in the frozen food section, and I have on a Black Men versus Injustice shirt on, and I got a mask on that says equality. So I'm just like a walking billboard, right? So I see this white guy. He's looking. I'm like, man, I wonder, you know, do I know him? I was like, but how would he recognize me with all this stuff on? But like, you know, whatever. Maybe he heard my voice talk to the kids. So something in me, like my hood antlers start kicking up, and I'm like, wait a minute, I think dude kind of is on something else. So I tell the kids, I said, go ask your mama for some bagels. So going over there, you know, like, you know, pick out some bagels, whatever.
Right. Get them out of the way.
By the time I turn around, he done already like making his way, and not like up on me, but close enough where it's like, you too close to be in a big old Costco to be this close walking past me. But he was basically like pissed of like my apparel.
And so want to stare you down.
Hey, listen. So when I tell people I'm from Detroit, not from around Detroit, so I'm like, so I just snatched my mask off and was like, what?
You said that?
Hey, he done dropped his little grocery
boom,
up to the front. Now what he doing? You about to go tell. But you started it. You know what I'm saying? You just thought you was about to try and intimidate me for the whole ride, but it's not going like that. So I think that's it. And I'll be honest with you. Like, this is probably very controversial, but I'm highly encouraging people to get their concealed pistols license. Because you got to be able to protect yourself. Like, if people are going to jump out there and be more brash and try and intimidate you, you are protected under the law like everybody else. But a lot of us feel like, well, we can't do that. You shouldn't do that. No, like, I would much rather be here to tell my story than sit there and let somebody brutalize and intimidate me. It's not going like that.
All right.
So, like that's a controversial stance for some people. But I absolutely suggest that you do what you have to do to get home to your family.
Right, because they have guns. I mean, and not even that. It's just like whatever rights are in that Constitution should be afforded to us in the same capacity. So I feel what you're saying, Kwame, because sometimes I do that as well. Like, make certain statements, and I'm like, I dare somebody. Yeah. I mean, you've seen my posts. And because my thing is, look, it is what it is. And that's part of why my tagline for the show is unfiltered and unapologetic, because it's like, it is what it is. Trump is a racist. And if you are someone who supports him, you're either an idiot or a racist too. That's the bottom line. And
I will qualify that.
That's inflammatory. No, he's inflammatory. Yeah. That's part of the problem. And you think we have to be silent about it, and we don't.
And I agree with you. I think I think what Sean is saying, and I agree with, and I feel like I know I share the same sentiment, is we have to temper so much of how we communicate our pain and interpretation of disrespect when it comes to white people, right? We have to temper the way we're going to communicate the way somebody has disrespected us, right? Like, what is that all about? Right. And that's how I interpret when Sean is like, he finally had a moment where he could just break down because it was too much. Yeah. Like, because he probably, under the best circumstances, I'm not trying to speak for you, Sean, but he may have just been like, I'm gonna do this when I get to the basement, when I get to, into my room or go to the restroom. Yeah. It's just so much happening all the time. Like, you just get, overwhelmed in that moment. So it's just, like, that's the thing I think is the most frustrating, is when the disrespect comes, then you also still have to find a way to make it palatable for the people who are disrespecting you.
Right. Right.
The biggest thing for me, right, is like I said, I mean, I had to drive home the point is that how I try to create this reality, right? So I have limited opportunities to have that engagement. Right.
So you don't even have to deal with that. Right.
So however, the burden that I carry are for all of those that I serve, because they don't have the option. They don't have the opportunity. Just listen, I lived in a part of the community, right? And then my family and we decided, you know what? It's time to move. We want to move.
You from Detroit, Sean? Or?
I'm from Jersey.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. All right. So I'm from Jersey, but I've been living here in Michigan because, I play ball at Michigan State. Right, Kwame?
Where's that?
You already know. Spartan Dogs, brother.
Where's that?
You already know.
By the old Cedar River.
You already know.
Oh, dirty.
But my point is, right, is that we decided as a collective that we were going to move into a better area for our children.
Right.
But this is the thing, is that those I serve don't have they don't have that option.
Right.
That's the burden.
Yep.
That's the burden that I carry of when I get these grown men who call me and they are being inflicted with pain constantly. They can't escape it. That's just like an inmate who gets out of prison, right? They get out of prison, and don't let them do all of their time. So there's no parole. They going straight to the street. And what happens? They go back to the community where they came from with a tag on them as a felon or whatever the case. So they are limited with options, right? My man doesn't have a degree, so he has limited options. So he doesn't have a lot of the same opportunities. So that's the burden, a lot of the burden that I carry of hearing these grown men. When you look at them, they are men with families, with big beards and mustaches, but they are plagued with pain and trauma, and people are walking by them like, yo, oh, they straight because they're a grown man. No, these men are dying silently. They're pissed. They're angry because they can't get a better job. Because you got a grown man with all of these kids and he's making minimum wage.
Right.
People playing them out. Right. Like as a man, that's tough. That's tough. So that's the burden when you see these young men and you see these young boys crying out. And I'm like, yo, like, I see what you're doing, bro, but I already know how this gonna end, man. I'm like, yo, I see how it's gonna end. Like, bro, y'all gonna be there for the rest of y'all life, man.
So do you have like survivor's remorse, Sean? Because that's, and Kwame too, like, because those of us who grew up in the hood or came from more urban areas, for me, I feel like it's kind of a gift and a curse for our kids, because it's a gift because they get the nice rec center, they get, you know, the clean neighborhoods, they get the you know, safe neighborhoods, they get access to stores that have quality products. But then also they don't have that street mentality to understand that in the real world, this is what you're going to experience. So do you all sometimes feel that when you say that guilt, sounds like some survivor's remorse? No,
you know what? Like, real talk, I don't feel, because this is my motto. I don't feel guilty for living the life I have, because that's what I preach. Right? Because regardless of their circumstance, like Kwame say, I hold them jokers accountable. So what if your child's mom not giving you access, bro? You better find a way. You have a felony, you have 2 or 3, you better find a way. So I'm saying that to him, but I'm going over here like, yo, I'm speaking to those who have the power to be. You're not right, bro. So I'm not giving my man an escape route to feel bad for himself. But when I'm amongst my other people, right? But I'm still like, yo, that's not cool, man.
Yeah.
That's not cool.
Yeah, because the accountability has to be there. This was a conversation I was having with another one of my friends, Marcus Divine, and his thing is we are always blaming the system and the man. We need accountability for our screw ups, pretty much. His thing is we need to stop killing. If we really cared like that, we would stop killing each other. We would be more conscious of what we're doing. We would be more accountable and stop blaming systemic racism. So yeah, talk about that, holding each other accountable, because see, that's something I appreciate. And that's another reason why I wanted to bring you all on, because it's essential that it comes from the horse's mouth, so to speak. It's like other men are going to hear what you all are saying, and I think it'll impact them more so than if it's just coming from me or someone else who doesn't understand what it's like to be a Black man. So talk about that accountability, how sometimes, because sometimes y'all know the brothers be bullshitting and the sisters too, but as a community, like when we have to hold each other accountable, talk about how you handle that, because you know they trying, but then sometimes people do, you know, slack off and use certain things as a crutch.
So I agree with you, but I think, you know, something Sean and I just talked about this week is there are all of these demands that are on Black men, but the same level of scrutiny is not applied to white men, especially with fatherhood, right? What are the expectations for white dads? Like, I've never heard any. I hear soccer mom, and that speaks to the white suburban mom, you know, who's doing everything. But nobody pulls the white dad to the fire. I've never seen Trump with his young son.
Never. Is he alive still? I was wondering. Look, very.
So like, why it let Obama not have been in any pictures for longer than a month without them girls? See, He don't take care of his kids. He's another one. Like all of that kind of scrutiny. So I think for us, I think one, we gotta keep our expectations high, but we gotta allow ourselves to define the bar for our own men, right? And that's why I love the work that Sean is doing, because as you heard him, it's a balance. I'm not just driving home with the dad and then all right, now you go up there and fight the whole justice system. No, I'm gonna hold you here, and as long as you're showing up here, I'm gonna fight with you and get you the resources to get through. But you got to be making 3 or 4 steps for the step I'm gonna take. And so I think that's something that's critical that people really aren't watching. And then I think we got to be careful about how much we're allowing the media to influence our interpretation of what's happening in our communities. So you might see some crime happening, but crime happens in all neighborhoods, but it's not reported the same way. So when a white kid goes into the school and shoots the school up, it's like, hey, we need to improve mental health, right? But when the black kid does a crime, like here's the thing. Now, I'm not saying at all that I supported the young man who had a psychotic break and started shooting police officers in Dallas a couple years ago. Like this was right after I believe another police killing. But they went and found some type of device, a little robot, and drove the robot up to because he was hiding inside the parking garage, and set off some explosive and blew half the wall off to get him. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, where did y'all get that thing from? Like, where did you get that? It was like, David Koresh, what they sitting there for 2-3 days trying to talk him down. And, and nobody came out with a scratch. He just decided, okay, we just gonna start killing ourselves. Like, you waited a couple of days for him, but after about 30-40 minutes, you done came in there and blew half the parking garage off to get him, with some device. So it's like, that's why it's like, for me, it's not just about the police brutality. It's about every environment, every discipline. We got to push and move people to press on equity and equality. Like, what is really happening inside this space? So social justice, in the justice system, what's happening there, the disproportionate number that's going to jail. Let me tell y'all, and educators are contributing factors, because 75% of the male population that Sean was serving were identified in special education, right? So to me, I'm inclined to support legislation that says if you are connected to 3 or more kids that go to prison and you identified them with special education, then you got to serve some time too, right? Because
so you're talking about the administrator, the educator.
Absolutely, because if you identified them for special education, which means that you restricted them from the general education setting, and now by law you got a contract, which is an individual education plan. It's by law. You created a contract that says you're going to work with this kid based on this disability and provide them the tools so that they can be successful. But what happens is they continue to fall further and further behind. And what does the kid eventually do? Drop out, or they get out, or you get some certificate and not a diploma. So like the worst thing that happens to our kids is that they get identified with the disability because the schools don't do anything about it. So I'm saying if they end up going to prison because of that, because we now know that this data that connects school to prison, then they need to also serve some time too.
Okay, so we're gonna trace back though, Kwame, like to when they had that IEP and that school psychologist diagnose them, because it's gonna be multiple people. It'll be the teacher, it might be the parapro.
Yes, everybody gets charged. I want you, because what happens when you do that, it forces everyone that's ever connected to that kid to be acutely aware of what they did to make sure this kid was getting everything he or she was supposed to get, right? That's just the bottom line. We have to increase the accountability. What I tell people is, if you look at in Michigan, for example, on average, you're getting $8,000 a year. So if you go to school for 13 years,
$8,000 per kid. Okay.
$8,000 per kid. So if you go to school on average for 13 years, and we're going to disregard inflation and all of that. Let's just say on average. So that's $104,000. I don't think anybody, including me, would say they got $104,000 of return on that investment and going to public school. So the student with a disability is usually getting about 30% more of that funding. So that means that puts a student at closer to $10,000, just over $10,000. So you talk about $130,000 of an investment if you got a disability, and depending on the severity of the disability, that number can go even higher, as high as $35,000 in places like DC. So that means $35,000 for 13 years. You talk about somebody's getting over $400,000 of an investment, and you end up going to jail? No.
Right. After you put all that, right.
After you got identified, that means the school took the money. That's a scam.
Yeah.
You would sue somebody if they did that to you.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that's happening. So
they don't understand when you break it down like that. That makes more sense because people don't realize, even a lot of times parents don't realize the options they have. Like my son was diagnosed with ADHD. And my concern was the school. Thank God I had people like you who were advocating for me and helping me. And because as a social worker, I knew what the school was supposed to do. I knew they were supposed to do the IEP in a certain amount of days. I knew that they were supposed to make these accommodations. They didn't find anything on the IEP, but he does have a 504. Is that it? 504? A 504?
Yes,
504 plan. But my concern was there were a lot of inconsistencies in his evaluation. And if I wasn't an involved parent, that would have gone unnoticed. Like the psychologist admitted to me that because the testing was done in sections, right? You know, they tested him on one part one day, then they tested another day. And they admitted to me that he pulled him out of class during gym one day. And he was like, I did his math score is probably lower than it should be because I pulled him out of gym. Why would you pull him out of gym if you know a kid is not going to want to pay attention to math?
That's right.
Like seriously. And just things like that. And then like some of my paperwork had someone else's child's name on it. So it's just like the school, I had to constantly check them about different discrepancies. And this was a charter school, by the way, but it was a stark difference when I put him into a public school. And I saw how it's so much more resources available to him. And I want to shout out his school, McIntyre Elementary in Southfield. Like they have just been phenomenal. Like he was night and day. Like in second grade, he was getting suspended. He was I'm so embarrassed, y'all. He actually spit on a kid. He was just like out of control. Third grade, he got with a teacher who in a different school district, a smaller school, a teacher who was experienced, because in his last school, his teacher was like 23. So she wasn't really experienced. And like I said, the last school, when they did the IEP, it was just a lot. I had a lot of struggle with getting that done. And it's like a culmination of things I see that happen with our young boys. Yes. The conversation, what you said about how your dad had to come up to the school and the teacher was riding you. And I noticed how our school environments are not conducive to young boys a lot of times, to their hyperactivity or them being boys, boys. And then also, I don't think a lot of our educators, and I saw this is supposed to be a new requirement. A lot of educators, it's supposed to be a new requirement for healthcare professionals. They're not culturally competent. They're not culturally aware. So they really don't know a lot of the things that go into the culture of being a Black child and a Black student. So I really, that's a concern. And I wanted to talk about, stick on that a little bit about the educational piece, about how it's not equitable. And and a lot of times, as Sean said, if you got a parent who's going to work, you stressed out and tired, which parent is taking time a lot of times to go to parent-teacher conferences? Which parent is following up to say, did my child get extra time on his exam like he's supposed, on his quiz today like he's supposed to? Did he receive the certain snacks that he was supposed to receive that are not, with dyes and sugars in them, little things like that. So I want to stick on the educational piece and talk about that. Like, even in your what you've seen also, Sean, what are some things that need to be in place for Black men and Black boys who are being educated? Because educating them in the normal traditional way is not effective. So, and I think that's what leads to that prison pipeline. That we're pretty much it's like a different check marks that are happening that leads eventually to them going to prison because they're not being supported in schools.
Yeah. So my position, right, is I come from the father's lane, right, from the parents aspect. And what I think the school need to do a better job with is integrating fathers, engaging fathers, of making that parent, making schools more parent friendly, spending time with giving parents more resources to support their children, right?
Right.
Knowing what are the barriers for these families, right? Listen, my kids already, my son is 8 and that brother almost passed me when it comes to his math already, right? Like, so I mean, I tap out like maybe algebra 1, like I tap out, like that's the max you're gonna get out of me.
Yeah, that's why I'm a writer. That's why I became a social worker. The math was not
So my thing is that I'm big on, I see the one of the biggest gaps is a lack of parent engagement, especially fathers. I don't see schools really supporting or encouraging dads to come in into the only time I see them having dads come in is when there are special events, dads and donuts, or just like moments.
I've seen that at the schools, but
that's not enough. I mean, that's just a moment. That's a moment. That's a highlight. I mean, that's just where we get excited because that's abnormal. It needs to be normal. It needs to become normal to see fathers walk in the hall. It needs to be normal seeing parents engage because it takes a community. So just because I can't take off, but you give me a schedule where, Jim, Dad will be able to take off and volunteer this particular day or that. Like schools need to be more proactive in the area of engaging, especially fathers. I mean, especially in the inner city, that would be super dope of seeing Black men walking around the halls, supporting, wiping down tables, right? Doing A, B, C, and D of helping out, but that's not encouraged, right? It's just like that's non-existent. So my piece is that whole parent engagement, especially the fatherhood engagement, in the schools.
Absolutely, I agree. Make it the norm because people are like surprised when dads are involved.
Oh, absolutely. I shouldn't be. I should not be receiving a standing ovation and high fives and claps and all that because, like, yo, that's what
you should be doing. That's what we should be doing.
That's what I'm supposed to be doing
as parents.
That's what I'm supposed to do.
Right. I felt this. Yeah, I felt the same way when I went to parent teacher conferences one time, and they were just like, "Thank you for coming, thank you." And I'm like, I'm supposed to come. I'm the parent, but I do realize that parents are not engaged like they should be, and that's all.
I agree, but you have to, like, it needs to be just as important as everything else. It's just like these agencies I work with. They provide services to mothers and they provide service to the children. Who they neglect is the father.
Yep.
That mama did not make that child by herself.
I agree. I absolutely agree.
Right? So what happens? Children are faced with more poverty when the father is not involved. More apt to get pregnant, more apt to deal with depression and suicide, all those things when a father is not involved, right? So how can you give this family support and you are not providing any services to find out what the dad needs? Where is that? How can we support that? Letting them know early on, like, okay, I understand y'all coming to these well baby visits together right now. Well, what happens if this does not work? What type of plan do you have in place? Why? Because the child is most important. This may work. This may not work. We don't know. but we need to make sure we have some things in place
Yep.
so that child is healthy emotionally.
Absolutely. Even if you all aren't together. And those are conversations, someone hasn't had about, oh, how are we going to co-parent? That's not a conversation that people have.
But we have a lot of co-parenting going on. Like it's almost like more, singles than there are like married couples.
Yeah. But I don't think we consciously look at co-parenting until the issues come up.
Yes.
Like until there's a problem, or you brought to the child support friend of the court. That's when people are like,
he mad by them. He mad by the time you telling me I gotta give this amount. I saw Terrell Owens. My last point. I saw a thing on Terrell Owens. Kwame, I don't know if you've seen it. My man was paying like $20,000 for each child, and he was talking to one of the mothers. The mother, she was getting, I think, like 8. She took him to court because one of the other moms was getting about 20. So she took him to court, was like, I should be getting 22. And I'm just thinking like, yo, I'm not tripping. I understand you making a whole lot of bread, but listen, my children do not need $20,000 worth of support every single month.
Well, they don't have the same lifestyle, right? But I mean, it's just,
but even if they do, like my kids don't have, they don't get what I get.
Right. Exactly. Right.
What I get.
Be a kid. Right. Right. Be a kid. As Mr. Simmons said yesterday, we raising them, preparing them from adulthood.
Yes.
And that's part of not spoiling them. And that's, yeah, absolutely. So I want to read a part of Ice Cube's plan. Pretty much he calls it a contract with Black America addressing racial inequality. So I wanted to read a part about just a couple bullets and get you all's feedback. So this is one where he is referring to schools. He says, affirmative action for all secondary schools, colleges, and universities, public and private. Black enrollment must meet or exceed the percentage of Black population, which is 13.4% nationwide. In addition, if the Black population in the county the school is located in is greater than 13.4%, the enrollment must be increased to the higher percentage. Okay. Also, mandatory civil rights and anti-racism classes in all elementary schools. Black scholars will write the textbooks and curriculum adopted for these classes. So what do you all think about that? So he's pretty much saying they need to have it. The enrollment needs to be at least 13%. And
yeah,
to
so
be a fair.
Yeah, so I mean, I agree with Cube. I mean, I think, but I still think it's a lower bar. It's like, to me, it's really where the money is. Like, so one of the things he talks about the, Black folk will do that curriculum, but I would say, and you have to pay them what you would have paid Hope Mifflin or Harcourt, the same amount that you're going to pay them. That's what you got to pay these other
who are
folks.
writing the textbooks.
Yes, that's where the real issue lies. Because so when you think about it, when I was a principal in DC, I opened up a blended learning school that got all of this like national attention, and we were trying to just do something that was innovative. And at the time, the Secretary of Education, Arnie Duncan, came to the school, and we were walking through the school and we're talking. And I was like, yeah, one of the big things I want to, increase our professional development. If it's a way for do this. And he was like, do you think your professional development is working? I'm like, yeah. So he was like, well, do you know how much we give in professional development as a Department of Education? I said, well, I'm thinking, I'm like, you got big places like New York City, LAUSD. I'm like, okay, well, probably, $1 billion, $2 billion. He was like, nah, try 600. $600 billion goes to professional development inside schools. So
this is nationwide.
Yeah, nationwide, $600 billion. So what ends up happening is that money starts to trickle down, and then where does it go? So it's going to companies who are charging exorbitant amount in fees, and a lion's share of those companies are white. right? So to me, when you start talking about equity, it's breaking up the bread. Like, break the bread up evenly. That, because to me, I don't really have any more interest in trying to come into some white company and try and get them to to share what they got going on. We've tried that already. We are capable enough to demonstrate what we can do right now. So like, that's the big thing for me. I also think that, if you look at the educational system, and I'm going to point something out, and just bear with me, because this is what I mean about how racism and prejudice is institutionalized in every fabric of our nation. But I'm going to break it down for you in terms of education. So 65% of people of color are enrolled in the top 20 largest school districts in the country, right? So you just think about all of those. Detroit is like probably like 19, because we so low now. But number one is New York City, then LA, Miami-Dade, then like Houston. So like, you start to get an idea of like these big giants. Chicago, the number 5. So then I started doing this research, and I said, okay, well, people are always talking about Black males not being in schools. So I started researching and realized that 60% of the country, out of all of the states, have less than 500 Black people enrolled in an education program in their entire state. 60% have less than 500. So just understand, less than 500 people of like Black people enrolled in their program. The other 30% have between 500, 501, and 1,000. Less than 10% have more than 1,000 Black people enrolled in there. Let me tell you why that's a problem. So once you do that, that means at the baseline, you don't even have that many Black people coming in to teach, because there's overwhelming evidence that 83% of pre-service teachers that identify and major as education are white and from the suburbs. When they first start teaching, they start coming in to where the jobs are. That's the urban areas.
Exactly.
Come on. So now they come in and do you get that. So you got the small percentage of Black folk that come in. People talk all of this junk about the HBCUs. Over 25% of the Black people that are hired entry-level position teaching come from HBCUs. 25% of those that get hired come from an HBCU. So if you have this small percentage to pull from to become a teacher, as you start to move up the ranks and become a dean of students, an assistant principal, the numbers start to dwindle down even more. Because remember, you only got 500 in 6% of the states to spread out for your whole state's public education landscape. So then when it's time to move up and become a principal, you don't have no candidates, and even less candidates to become a chief academic officer or a chief operator or a superintendent. So if you don't have someone that looks like the people that they're serving, how are they going to understand what the needs are of those people?
I have a question for you.
And so remember, what'd you say, Sean?
I got a question for you. So with that being said, what's the problem? Like, why aren't there as many Black teachers to pull from? Like, why aren't there as many teachers like in the Grand Blanc or those affluent school districts? So why are they?
That's the question, bro. That's the question, and that's where and so that's why I was like, how deeply embedded the prejudice exists, because it starts with the recruitment from the university. Because if the university is marketing to certain populations, that you get other communities that never get the information. So that's why the numbers stay low. It's not that people of color, that Black people aren't interested in education. We all want a job that got benefits and you can be off for the summer. Everybody looking for that. That's the hookup, right? You know what I'm saying? So that's the problem. So I'm actually working in the state of Louisiana right now to address the equity that happens for all of their universities in the state of Louisiana. They're the only state right now that's requiring their colleges of education to pay attention to where they're doing their marketing and recruitment and actually marking them down if their enrollment, like Ice Cube is saying in this in his
needs to be at least 13.
Enrollment doesn't look like the population that's where their community is.
Right. Now, well, I want to touch on that, Kwame. That was okay. So an educator is an educator. We had some great teachers who were white, Black, Asian, whatever. But I do believe that, and not that a white teacher cannot teach. But my conflict that I had, and my husband and I had a debate about this, is that when my son was in the 2nd grade, I felt like the teacher he had, she was a white young lady. She was from South Lyon, Michigan. And I felt like she just, I felt like her not knowing about Black culture and about Black children was part of what led to a breakdown in the interaction between her and my son. Now, when I switched him to the new class with the Black teacher, he was still having some issues, but I could tell the Black teacher was a bit more patient with him because she was a Black woman. So do you feel like that? I guess what I'm trying to say is, do you feel like only Black educators can educate Black kids? Or should it just be a considerable, I mean, of course we can't say that, but there should be a significant amount who are educating them. Of course, so they can't have all Black teachers, but that does speak to diversity and inclusion. It does matter when people understand the culture. It's been proven that service provision is improved because they understand the population.
So the thing that I would say, I will point to is Miss Charters, our middle school math teacher.
Oh my God.
Miss Charters is a white woman, but she connected with each of us.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? In a place and taught us at a very high level. You were not going to be in her class and not get that work done, and you weren't going to be in her class and not get a hug. Right? Yeah. She's gonna high five you, she's gonna hug you, and you gonna do, you know, polynomials. That ain't sexy to no middle school kid, but you're gonna get it done though.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So I believe though, if you're gonna be white, here's the standard. You must be anti-racist, right? And that needs to be determined upon your entry in the school. Right. Like that's the thing right now. Like you can no longer hide and say, hey, no. You need to have questions that get at if a person has racist tendencies in the interview process.
Right.
Right.
Biases that they might have.
Especially if you're overwhelmingly white. Now, here's the thing. I think this becomes an issue. If you are in a school and your school is in a Black community and your school has an overwhelmingly large number of white teachers in a Black community, that's the problem.
That was part of my issue. It was a mixture, but there were no.
Because you can't. Because let me tell you this. I don't care. I can call up 50 teachers right now on my phone. So if I can do that just off of an informal request, how are you gonna tell me you can't find them and you got a marketing budget in a city, you know, that's overwhelmingly Black? I don't want to hear that. That means you're to me, it's either you are anti-racist or you racist. So if you got a school that's like that, then you're racist. You don't want to swallow that pill because you're going to choke on it. But that's the reality of where you are because the evidence says that you are racist, right? There's zero chance you can get me to believe if you in the city of Detroit and you got more than 60% of your teachers white in an all 80% Black city. I'm not buying that. You got a racist leadership governance structure at that school.
Absolutely.
Because you got to start changing it.
And that's what I said about policies. That's what I'm saying about policies being changed. Like, this is great that all of these monuments are being brought down and the statues, and we're changing building names. But to me, that's a superficial fix. we need to change the policy. So if people were talking about changing my school, Cass Tech, and of course we were all up in arms about it. My thing is change the policies of the requirements for that standardized testing in that school building. That's what needs to change. Change the requirements so that black African, like your dad said, Black history is not just taught during February or it's a special class. It needs to be incorporated. Those are the things, the fundamentals that need to be changed. But I also wonder, again, how effective is professional development? How effective because that was a question I asked the principal of my son's former school, who, by the way, was a Black male. That was part of why I kept my son at the school, because I wanted him to see a Black man in a position of power being effective. But my question to him was, what is the cultural diversity or the cultural competence training that is provided? And he's like, oh, they go to their professional development. So I'm wondering, what does this encompass? Because it still seems like there's a disconnect in, if they have not been immersed in the culture, it's a disconnect from just a class that you take, that you can properly educate our kids.
Yeah, so I would say, first of all, for me, anytime, I am asked to lead a school, how you develop those teachers needs to be in connection to what the needs of the community are, right? Because you are just a vessel inside the community. We are here to serve the parents. See, that's a philosophical position you got to take, that you're here to serve the parents and the people in the community. So if you go to a school and you ask teachers, what's the largest church in the community? Where do people go to the grocery store? Where do people get their haircut? Where do they get their nail? If you can't answer those questions, I'm going to tell you right now, you got a school that's not going to be high performing. You got to be a part of the community. You got to get professional.
Got to be a part of the community. So that's similar to the police not living in the communities in which they serve. That's probably the disconnect there. Because they're not immersed surrounded by the people they serve.
1,000%. Because what happens, and people might say, oh, well, that's trivial. Let me tell you why it's not. By starting there, you start to develop cultural awareness of that community.
Exactly.
Because even in a place like Detroit is different. You got Northeast that has a large Hmong community. You got West Part that's Arab American. You got Southwest that's Hispanic, and everything else kind of like mixed in between, primarily Black in the middle. So, but what you get when you start to walk the neighborhoods of the school that that building resides in, you start to understand, oh, so if I teach math, I can say, if I'm going to do geometry, a squared plus b squared equals c squared. If you started at the party store right here on the corner of Dexter and Davison, see, now it's contextual, because the kids are like, oh, you talking about all these different points. You should have told me. The fastest way to get there, you got to go from over here to over there. Mr. Hart, if you'd have said that from the beginning, we wouldn't have been wasting all this time. I could have went to recess. You see what I'm saying? By doing that kind of professional development, teachers start to understand the fabric of the community, and they can start using references that make sense to the kids, right? They become culturally responsive, and that's what we call like culturally relevant teaching. So you gotta immerse them in the community first, and then you can go into the science, like all of the stuff, like what kind of process you're going to use to teach addition, all of that stuff. You're going to be able to get that. But so I call it the art and science of teaching, right? You can get the science. Everybody can Google that. But the art is really where the training comes in. And that's understanding the cultural context for which you're trying to provide support to kids, because that's what's going to really make that connection with them.
Yep, absolutely. I agree. So, Sean, I wanted to shift a little bit back to the conversation you all had with the three white guys. So if you can just kind of give us a snapshot of that conversation, and have you all have any steps been made, any updates on that? Like, have you all partnered together to do anything? Because I do believe as far as eradicating racism, eradicating some of the issues we deal with, we do have to have those allies. We do have to have those allies. And I do believe they are obligated to help us. Yep. Just like they fight for any other human situation, they can fight for this. So talk a little bit about that conversation you all had. I forgot the men, their names.
So we had Jody, we had John, and we had gentleman Nate. So we did do some follow-up, and actually we are going to I'm working on doing a follow-up with that to see where everybody is. So I know following that there have been a lot of dialogues across the lines, a lot of dialogues. There have, I believe, some progress. However, there are some things still that need to be worked out. Right. So one of my goals was to show or to have an authentic conversation with both sides for both the Black guys and the white men to be able to speak not only for themselves, but for their community and their culture. Right. To hear it from each other's perspective without being offended, of being transparent. So I do know that Kwame have had some conversation. I know George has had some conversation, and we've had our own conversation on the side of some of the behaviors and things that we need to do to follow up from that conversation to make sure that that wasn't just an isolated moment, but to see what type of work has been done or can continue to be done. I know with Mr. John Wentworth, he and I spoke, and we are going to do some following up because he's in a position to help individuals with jobs and job training. We have done some business together, since then, or whatever the case. But there's still some room. There's still a lot of room for growth. I believe after that conversation, so many people was impacted by it. I received so many calls, from both sides, Black and white, that was impacted by it because they were, we said what we needed to say and we spoke for our community. Right. And then we heard from, the white guys and they spoke from their side. So it was a beautiful thing for people to at least get some healing. Kwame and I, talked about it afterwards, and even George, on how we felt so much better, after the call. Still know that there's a lot of work to be done, but as that was our therapy, you guys just had an opportunity to sit in on our therapy.
I had group therapy.
Yeah, that's one of the main things. It was therapy for us, and then for us to be able to get that out. And I believe, I don't know where it's at now, but it was at one point, I looked, it was like 6,000-7,000 people, watched it. So at least skimmed or listened to some pieces of it. Right. So which I know, is just, we have to do everything that we can do to help build bridges. And that's what I'm all about. Is building bridges. I'm one that will not sugarcoat it. I use my flavor to get my point across. And that's the dope thing about, us as humans. Like, everybody have their lane. Everybody have their place. Like, we needed Malcolm. We needed Marcus Garvey. We needed Malcolm. And it becomes a problem when we try to make everybody be like me. It's a problem when we try to make everybody be like Kwame, because I tend to approach problems or solutions my way. Don't kick my back in because the way I choose to. You need my style.
Right. You gotta have multiple voices at the table.
Absolutely.
Right.
So it's the same way, with Kwame. We need his, right? We need his approach. We need, his intellectual, wherewithal to be able to cross certain lines. So that's big on me, man, where we try to put some people in a box and say that you can only do it this way. And I'm like, nah, that's not cool. That's not what we do. So we should be able to have platforms like this and help the world around us, because we are humans. right? We all humans, we all hurt, the whole nine. And what we're just saying is just like, yo, you need to listen up, man. Like real talk, you need to listen. Right. I mean, because that's the only way that we can move the needle. So my thing is, man, what I do, I just stay in my lane. My lane is I try to build up my fathers. I try to help them become the best men that they can be. So that way we can make our communities stronger. And this is the thing, man. I say this finally, is that this whole fatherless thing, when I do my research and done my research, this is not a Black issue. There's fatherlessness in the white community.
Yes. Where is the bell? I wish I had a bell today. Yes.
It's fatherlessness in the white community as well as the Black community. But we make it seem like it's a Black thing, a Black problem. And it's not. It's a human problem. That's why you don't see involved dad with, just Black images or we are Black. No, we for fathers. Like there's white kids out there suffering because daddy is not there, or his tail whooping on mama, or he's drugged up, or he's working, 23 hours out the day and neglecting his child. This is a human problem. You know what I mean? So people don't get it twisted. Fatherlessness is not a Black problem.
No, not at all. And that's another thing that I've learned as a social worker, that white, Black, Asian, Latino, there's domestic violence, there's substance abuse, there is childhood trauma. But as someone said earlier, and I think it was Kwame, how the media propagates it.
Absolutely.
The images that they put out here. So I want to ask you all, as far as men and their feelings, how do you balance being the macho man alpha male with, because again, it's still the stigma of men crying and I really appreciated how that endearment you showed your dad, Kwame. I was like sitting like, I was like sobbing like, oh, this is so beautiful. I love that. But for me, because men are just so, we are conditioned to think that men should be macho man, you don't cry. My husband and I tomorrow, we're going to do like mani-pedis, and he's like, don't tell nobody I'm getting, I'm not no punk, and I'm like,
tell me the moment we open up, I'm owning. So, if
you need a referral, we're going tomorrow. They're Black owned, they're clean, sanitized. But
he all good. He all good. He can't escape it. We're gonna get him.
It's not a regular thing, but I'm like, your hands and toes need some attention. And I'm like, actually, I think I'm gonna treat you because
right.
So, but how do y'all balance that seriously? Because of course, with your wives, we see you. We know we've laughed. We've like the OJs. We done cried together. But to the world, how because it really touched me, Sean. I'm not sure who was the white man. He seemed like he was really emotionally affected by what's going on, and that really touched me as well. And I hope that his emotion transfers to his actions. But how do you all talk about that balance in that? Because I'm sure that machismo, you run into that with the men you deal with. I'm sure they don't want to show you that they're hurting about that and about what's happening to them. So talk about that, about men exploring their feelings and finding those safe spaces where they can, cry, scream, or whatever, or say, I'm scared.
Go ahead, Kwame.
Yeah, so I think, I'm going to be honest, I think the very first, and this is the thing, like growing up with in a house of all boys, like you develop like patterns of behavior. And I'm gonna be honest, like my initial thought about like girls was conquer, right? Like go after them, like go get them. Like, like back in the day, like, the kids got all these devices, but it was like, go to the mall and get numbers. Like, how many numbers can you get? Like that was the thing. Like you got on the bus and you came back, you peeling your different numbers out to see like, what numbers. And like
gum wrappers and all. You got gum wrappers.
They're like, all right, if we tied, we got to call all the numbers. And if one of your numbers don't work, then I won because she gave you the wrong number.
That was a game.
Yes.
Oh, hilarious.
so I think it was unlearning that, right? And that's something that, I always keep coming back to schools, because if we say what we're teaching in school is what's going to make people successful, then why don't we teach parenting? Why don't we teach co-parenting? Why don't we teach anti-racism? Why don't we teach equity? Right? Like, these are things that are like, it's a no-brainer sitting right in front of your face. You see what I'm saying? So like, so I think it's trying to unlearn those behaviors. And it really hit me. I was like, with my daughter, I think, she was probably like, my oldest daughter was like, Daddy, I'm scared of you, because I was so alpha male, because like I just was raising her like I thought I was raised. Like, all my brothers
are scared of us, or do we want them to fear or respect? We want them to.
Yeah, but
we want you to be afraid of us, but really,
if I'm telling you stop. But just, I don't want you to be in constant like fear. The way she was explaining it made me feel bad. And I had to reflect on like what I was doing in the moment, and everything didn't require to be so ramped up. And basically what I started to do is like, look at, what does parenting really mean? Like, am I balancing like the high octane, like kind of behavior with some nurturing things that help me connect with her so that she feels comfortable expressing all of herself, right, with me? Because like, I want her to feel like I got her back, and not like, oh my God, I can't tell him because he's gonna, be all kind of erratic. I'm like, that was never my intent. Remember, I was talking about intent versus impact, and the impact was making her feel anxious. And so I had to realize like, oh, okay, wait a minute. Like, each kid is different. Some kids are more like emotional. Some kids are a little bit more stubborn, like all of those kind of things. Some kids are a little bit more attentive, pay attention to detail. Some don't really care, a little messier, a little cleaner. So I had to learn to adjust to each one. But it was really like the real sealer for me was my wife. Her ability to understand her emotions, but to communicate her emotions with words. See, like, I had been with women who would say things like, you should just understand. But I'm telling you, I don't understand. Right? Well, then you need to go over there somewhere then. And like, that just became so frustrating. You should just understand. What she would say, no, when you didn't call me back, that hurt my feelings. It made me feel as if I wasn't important. Right. Else was more important to me. I'm like, oh, okay, wait a minute. No, that's not what I was doing. So it helped me process emotions. And now connect rationally to like what you're doing. Like, yeah, that does make sense what you said, why you would feel like that. So she has educated me so much on that, because that was something that we really didn't do in my house. Like, if you got upset, you just start wrestling. Right. And then the emotions, the energy got out.
Physical aggression seems to be how men solve problems. And I've told my husband like that, so you don't always have to fight. We don't always have to fight, be physically, not him and I, but it doesn't have to be you always about to bust somebody upside the head. But that's that mentality of us coming from the hood, as well as being educated, but having to be on edge.
But I think it's also just maleness. And I think that's another thing that we end up having to suppress, that we're not allowed to just demonstrate our maleness. Like, let's just acknowledge that and say, okay, well, that's who you are. You can be that, but here are some other things that you can be as well. So let's expand your catalog of things that you can do and what you can be. And I think, instead of it having to be either or. Absolutely. I think that's the stuff that happens to Black men that doesn't happen to white men. Right? Nobody tells a white man, calm down. They don't say that to them, right? They're like, man, you can conquer the world. Like you don't even, you barely hear people use that kind of terminology with Trump. And he is absolutely out of order. Like, as a person, he'd be suspended. Like, he's so, I got to see your parent. Like, you out of order, bro.
You're right.
You are out of order.
Expelled.
You know what I'm saying? Like, I got to give you some time off. And you can see it with Obama. Oh, in order for Obama to have become the first Black president, he had to be the absolute prototype of controlled emotion. You never saw him go into rant the respectability the current president does. Like, you never ever saw that. Like, that would have been it. And they still hated him, even though he presented that way.
Right.
You know? So
even when he frowned, they jumped on him.
Yeah.
So let me get your response to that, though.
From what perspective?
However you want to provide it. I'm just saying the question was, we were, balancing that machismo with your feelings. So whichever way you want to handle it.
Yeah. So I've never been afraid to express myself. Right. So that's never been an issue for me. That's just like my makeup.
Okay.
Right. So, however, like Kwame say, you grow up with the mentality of you gonna conquer, right? And I was an athlete.
Don't let them right. Oh, you definitely need to be tough.
So I was an athlete. You know what I mean? Then you play collegiate football or whatever the case. So now you put all of those things into it. And I shared this before, is that my dad gave me permission to be reckless when I left high school. And what I mean by that, and I don't know, and I think that was just his way of trying to connect with me, but my dad told me to basically go have as much fun as I wanted to.
And see, that's the freedom men get. Yep.
Right. So that's what was. So my thing was like, oh, I'm gonna go and do that. Right. So I mean, so that was, the whole, thing of conquer. And I didn't look at women as I don't know. I respected them, but it was just like, it was just like that whole conquer thing. Right. But it was as I began to get older and understand and start to reflect, like, bruh, like, this is not the way. But growing up in, the environment, that's what you were told to do. Right. I mean,
I guess it's like, are y'all both in y'all 40s?
Yeah.
Okay. So I think this is just like a 40-year-old thing, because my husband has said the same thing. Like, I'm having to unlearn shit that was ingrained. He's having to unlearn shit that was ingrained in him since a kid.
Oh, absolutely.
He's having to unlearn things. So what are the conversations you all are having with your own sons? Like you said, your son is 8, Sean. Our son is 9.
Yep.
Kwame, how old is your son?
I got 2, 20 and one that's 7.
Okay, so
20 tomorrow. It'd be 20 tomorrow, and then 7.
Woo! So you got a grown one and you got an adolescent. So what are the conversations you all because like I feel like I have to be very careful when I'm explaining things to my son.
Well, my approach is this, is that when they get exposed to it, we having that conversation.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So that's my model.
So you're not like preparing for that, or you saying wait till an incident happens?
No. So my son is 8. Right. So he didn't have a situation yet, but he got exposed. Like when he had his first erection, they making a big thing out of it. I'm like, oh, we need to have this talk.
Right.
This is what this is how this operate. When you wake up in the morning, boom. So we talking about it, right? So it's that type of thing. And then when he's see women on television or whatever the case, and he's starting to have reactions, we having conversations, as early as 8 on how and the biggest thing I can do for my son is what I do, and I demonstrate how I interact with his sisters, and I demonstrate, number one, how I interact with his mother, how I'm affectionate with his mom, how I communicate with his mom, happy or sad, right? So I demonstrate it, because children, it's not what you say, it's what you do.
Right.
Because I can say, yo, do this, but I can be around here wilding out on my wife and his sisters, the whole nine. But my biggest thing is the modeling is what I do. And when my son begins to show emotion or be crying and the whole nine, I don't shut it down. But what we do, we have a conversation about it, because I need to know why you're crying.
Yeah, mine is in that crying phase too. I'm like, boy.
So I'm not tripping on that. I'm not tripping on you getting upset, have a temper tantrum, whatever. But we need to talk about it, because you need to know how to process that emotion. As you get older, you're gonna get stronger. I don't need you to use your physicality to hurt somebody. So I need you to know how to process all of these emotions that's coming. Because a lot of times when you're a kid, especially a boy, you're not taught on how to operate in self-control. Right. So I don't want him just to have one speed, and that's physical aggression. I want him to be able to communicate. I want him to be able to process his thoughts and what he's feeling. Is that real or is that fake?
Yeah. And because I like, my son is so expressive. I love how he'll say to his friends, like, I'm really sad that you couldn't come over. Do you? And I'm like, he's just, and I know his friend is like, okay. It's like, I don't need you to, but like you said, we're that household where we talk about feelings, and and we'll say like, yes, I'm feeling angry now. This is not, this is what's going on now. I'm feeling sad about this. So
that's right.
What about modeling how things go, how you interact in the world though, Sean? Because you said you limiting yourself. So how are we modeling to our sons how they show up in the world? So
let me just to help you understand, pre-COVID, I was always in the street, because who I work with is dudes in the hood. Right. So don't get it. So when I'm saying I limit myself, it's like I can go to this liquor store, or I can go to the store down the street. I have options. Right. So it's from that perspective. Like, I don't have to go to this store over here because it's convenient. I can drive another mile to go. So when I say I choose and I create the reality that I want, I pick and choose where I want to go, where some people may not have that opportunity, right? However, just like a lot of us, when we raising our children, we want them to have a better life than us. So my kids will never know how it is to grow up in the hood. They'll never know.
No.
They'll never know what it is to see somebody get shot in the middle of the street or whatever the case, right?
No.
You know what I mean? From my brother being murdered, my boys, the whole night. So they would never know that reality. So I can't even foster that environment for them, because they won't experience that, right? Because that's not where we live. However, the best thing I can do is to expose them through conversation, through moments like this, when we have these George Floyd things or whatever. It's like every opportunity that presents itself is a learning opportunity. So that's the only way that I can create or give them an opportunity to learn something, but they'll never be able to experience what I experienced, because I moved them from that environment so they don't have to.
Yeah. Yep. I remember when my Ben and I, we took our kids back to his old hood, and our son ran out in the street and a car was coming, y'all. And I'm like, it was like this moment where of course, thank God the car slowed down. But I'm like, see, this is what happens when you raise them in the suburbs. They don't even realize, watch, we've taught them look both ways, but they don't realize, because like here at home, they can sometimes play out in the middle of the street. It's that freedom they have because they in the burbs. But it's just like that mentality is not there to be watchful and mindful, because they did not grow up in the hood. So Kwame, what are some conversations you've had? Because I love yesterday, your dad was talking about how he would watch you walk to the store and he would be behind you. And I've done similar things with my kids where I'll be like watching, them not knowing that I'm there, watching over them. So what are some of the same do you have similar conversations with your sons, or?
I do. So one of the things that I've taught all my kids was, I always say a thing. It's like a routine at night. Who's smarter than you? And their response is nobody. And so people, like come by, like, why would you say that? Like, you encouraging this kind of thing, you encouraging that. Because I'm like, you need to have an overwhelming amount of self-confidence, because the moment you step out of the house, people are going to be chipping away at your armor. When you come back, I need you to have enough in your tank where you don't feel depleted.
Right.
So the example that I typically give about this is, and it's my same mantra in school, that, some kids come to school, who may not have a lot of material things. They might not have the resources. Their house may not be the right way. So, if you started with 100 chips, right, poker chips, they might start the day with 10. But this young man, for instance, comes to school and it might be his birthday. So his mama was able to muster up some stuff, got him some shoes. So he comes to school with 25 poker chips. He gets on the bus driver tells him, hey, Kwame, good job. Happy birthday. I saw your mom was waving at you. She was all excited. Give him a compliment. Now you got 35. He gets in class first period. And the teacher asks him a question, and he answers the question wrong and loses 20 poker chips. In first period, now he's got 15 poker chips. So now he's much more conservative about how he's going to operate throughout the rest of the day on his birthday.
Right. Because
the cheerleader,
the
captain of the cheer team answers the question wrong as well, but she's so inundated with positive reinforcements that she answered the question wrong, lose the same 20 points, and she's at 60 because she started with 80. But she gets out into the hallway when class dismisses, and they're like, girl, that triple flip that you did was so good. By the time she gets to the next class, she done went from 60 to 100. So the reason why, and that's the reason why I talk to my kids like that, because I got to get you starting your day on 100. Right? You got to have 100% of confidence so that when you go out there, you ready to rock and roll. And so something that, even the teachers say, like, I tell my kids if they get frustrated, I want them to have a positive way to release and then recognize that they're frustrated and then push through it. So like you'll see my kids, they come over your house, whatever, once we get through with all of this stuff, and then they'll like, I tell them to say, So they're like, people be like, man, what is wrong with you? You acting crazy or something? But the rationale is I want them to recognize the emotion, release that emotion, get yourself more under control, and push through.
Yep.
Right. Yep. Because you gotta be able to push through. Because what happens is people hold in that frustration, and then it bubbles over and turns into anger.
Yep.
Right. And then now the anger becomes much more difficult to control. And now you went from a situation that you could have managed if you had a strategy to decompress that emotion. And now you're in a whole nother stratosphere. And especially for my Black boys, if you do that and you just hauling off and you just losing control of your emotions all the time, they got a place for that, right?
Right.
So that's you can't be that way. So that's just in place to help us.
What we tell them to do though, because like with my son, I spoke to him about taking a deep breath and counting to try to calm himself down, because I was trying to teach him ways to calm himself down when he's in the classroom and he was upset, because really my son is not a physically aggressive type kid. So I knew when he was knocking over chairs, I'm like, something is not right, because he's not the type of kid who's just fighting. He wasn't scrappy like me. He's more of a laid back, chill type kid. If you don't bother me, I'm not bothering you. I'll come to you when I'm ready. He's a very chill type kid. So I was really trying to teach him. And I actually bought him a journal too, because I'm trying to teach him like different ways to manage his emotions, and that it's okay for him to have emotions and manage them. Yeah. So what do y'all suggest for boys out here who are frustrated, who have to hopefully help out there? Sometimes kids in the hood they're like little grown people, because they have to assume the role in their households a lot of times. Or even if it's a suburban kid who just has the frustration of a teacher who's not listening to them, or parents are not listening to them. What are some methods you all found have worked or can work for young Black boys? Because yes, as soon as they get upset in the public sphere, it's going to be a problem, even though a lot of the feelings they have and they're entitled to. So what are some methods you all think will help to keep our boys where they can still be validated in their emotions, but not?
So the first thing that I would say is pay attention to your ratio of positive to critical feedback that you're sharing, because it needs to be like clear how you're communicating to your son. So like for me, I always, and this is like when I'm even in school, is I try to affirm kids emotions.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to tell you you're being bad. Like I don't say that. Like, get your emotions out. And see, and to me, and this is what I'm saying, like about maleness. And see, when you've been around like males and you've competed, there really isn't a male emotion that will startle me. You can yell, cuss, fuss, fight, throw stuff, you know, and I just be like kind of like chilling, right? Because what happens so much is that those behaviors get interpreted by someone else who doesn't understand maleness.
Right.
They start to redefine what that is, right? And that's the point that I was making about, you know, the number of the ratio of pre-service teachers, at 83% being white and from the suburbs. So I'm saying that if you can give positive feedback, and I'm saying like a 3-to-1, but really a 4-to-1 ratio, because what happens is that your son starts to realize, like, wait a minute, these are the desired behaviors that my parents, who I aspire to satisfy, this is what they're recognizing.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like as soon as you get up, I mean, it's as simple as, I really like the way you took time brushing your teeth. Like, I'm looking at your teeth look really good.
Right.
Like,
I
took care of my hygiene. You know what I'm saying? So they start
the toilet lid again. That's
I'm telling you. Oh, you know what? So you want some toast? Let me show you how to make your own toast.
Yeah.
You made that, but you know what I like even more that you made that? I like the fact that you put everything back.
Yep.
And you cleaned up behind yourself. So they're like, I'm supposed to clean up behind myself. Like, so you get proactive about like some of these behaviors. They start to demonstrate that and say, oh, this is what's really expected, versus you reacting to however they're like behaving. That's what I think is just, you know, getting up and starting the day, chasing your ratio of 4-to-1, I think is would be my suggestion for you.
Mm-hmm.
And if people think those small things don't matter, but they become the building blocks of who your kid is.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
They get all of these positive deposits, because remember, everything else around them is reinforcing that they're less than.
Exactly.
Right? So I'm saying
inferior.
Yeah, so that's what I would
exactly.
Right. So to piggyback on Kwame, I totally agree with that. Like, I affirm my children all the time, and even when they don't make the best choices, I mean, we discuss those, right? Like, I never stop loving you. I'm not disappointed in you. Like, yo, let's. I'm big on helping them process, especially my son, because he's not going to be small always, right? I mean, because he's going to be a big, black man, I need him to have self-control.
Yeah.
Right? I need him to be a thinker. So I always, no matter what decision he make, I always have him process it, even if it's afterwards. Like, he has to process that with me and talk to me. Like, okay, talk to me. And he may do the same thing 30 times, but I still need him to process that information. I need him to talk about why he made that. Well, why did you make it? Why are you angry? Why are you crying? Right? So you're not crying just because it hurt. Are you embarrassed?
Right.
So you mean, so why? Right? So, well, why are you embarrassed? Like, let's get to the root of it. You know what I mean? So now that can get to ego, all those type of things. I don't care what it is, but I need you to be aware of it and not neglect what's truly there. So if that's your ego, that's yours. I mean, you have to own it, but I need you to be aware of it. Yes. I want you to just be aware. I don't want you to lie to yourself or to everybody else, because I knew that, I mean, it's not cool just to say that you jealous. I remember the first time I really started dealing with me is when I had to openly admit, like, bro, you a hater. Like, I used to have listen, like, for real, I could say it now.
I can see that, Spartan.
You mean, hey, I'm telling you, man, like, I was excelling, But if I seen another black man that was excelling when I was growing up, I would automatically say, oh, he a dope dealer. Oh, he did this. He did that to get that. So I would justify why he was doing better than me. So I'm like, bruh.
Focusing on how you can do better.
Yes, instead of focusing on me. So I had to start working on me, right? And that's what a lot of people ain't gonna say that, right? It is what it is.
That comes with it too. The maturity.
It does, but it comes with maturity, but it comes with like, y'all, I don't want to stay stuck.
Yep.
Like I don't want to, be in poverty. I don't want to be somebody that I don't want to be a public success, but a private failure. So my thing is like, bruh, Sean, you have to work on you so you can be authentic in everything you do. So when I stand up and I'm preaching or I'm ministering, I'm working with fathers the whole nine, like, yo, they know all my flaws. They know all of my issues. Why? Because my wife know everything. So I don't have anything to hide.
Right.
I mean, so my thing is we know. Authentic. So where I am in my life today, that I'm being super authentic. So I don't have to perform for nobody. And it's a lot less pressure because I don't have to perform nobody. Because I spent my earlier years performing and trying to get the approval of everybody else.
Right, which is exhausting. Yes.
Yes.
It is definitely a freedom that comes when you get to that fuck it point where I'm not, I'm setting my own boundaries and lanes here. So, okay, guys, I really enjoyed our conversation, and I really hope you'll come back and offer your expertise, especially Sean. I'm sure I'm going to be reaching out to you for the dad piece, because that's something I'm passionate about as well, like keeping dads involved, and Kwame knows with education as well. I'll be reaching out to you because I want to do a show on well, actually I already did a show on school to prison pipeline, but I want to do a part 2 to continue that conversation. So I really think that's something that needs to be at the forefront. A lot of things behind the scenes we don't realize that are contributing to our kids becoming delinquents while they are being educated at the same time. That mindset of the metal detectors and all of this stuff. The multiple suspensions and just things of that nature. But I want to end on a fun note. So imagine you are going to an island. I want you to choose 3 things that you are going to take with you to this island. This is going to be for an indefinite period of time. You don't know how long you're going to be on this island, and you can only take 3 things with you. 3 things.
I'm gonna just say the 2. I'm gonna just say the 2. The third I'll tell you offline. But I'll say my wife. Definitely my wife and my Bible.
Okay.
Because I can't be on there by myself, homie.
Right. Okay.
And I gotta have my faith because I'm getting my tail off that island.
Right.
So
or on there for years, decades. Right. Okay. Wife and Bible. Okay, good answer. Shout out to Sean's wife, by the way.
That's interesting. So Sean took it all. He talking about he getting off the island. Like, I've been so quarantined. That's all I've been thinking about is getting to an island. I love to vacation.
Really?
And Tamika and I barely made it back. Like, we did a little thing, and we were scared to tell people. We was on the cruise ship at the end of February. People was looking at us like, what?
Right. Spraying you down, probably.
Yeah. So I agree with Sean. I'm definitely taking my wife, but I'm taking my 90s playlist and I'm taking my grill. Right?
Your 90s playlist and your grill?
Yes, my grill. Because I'm like, if we're going to be on an island, I'm thinking tropical. Like, I love to grill. Like, we're going to eat real good. Like, we're gonna eat real good. We're going to find, like, my wife is an amazing cook. So we're gonna use all of these fresh herbs that's out here on this island, and we're gonna go to work. We're gonna listen to some good music.
So you trying to say I'm gonna starve because I ain't taking food?
Well, I mean,
So
hey,
that's what you're saying? I said I'm getting off the island, bro.
You want to eat some berries or something, Sean?
They go come get us.
My berries gonna turn into wine, so that's what I do. I take my wine with me. So I got my wife, my wine, and my Bible.
I'm mad at it. I ain't mad at it. Well, fellas, please, thank you again. I appreciate the dialogue. Please know if you need me or my platform, I'm here. I'm available. Just give me a holler, shout me out. Please give your social media so people can find you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Rocky. I appreciate this. This is
welcome.
very.
I appreciate you allowing me on as well. So yeah, that I can. My website is SeanHart.com. So just like my name is spelled here, SeanHart.com, and it'll take them to everything else. So
okay. And where can they find you, Kwame?
Oh, it's gonna be at SimmonsAdvantage.com.
SimmonsAdvantage.com. And is that your educational consulting business?
Yes.
Okay. I love it. Okay. TSA. All right. Okay. Well, I appreciate you fellas again. Thank you. Have a great evening. Blessings to you and your families. And definitely, this is not goodbye. This is see you later, because I'm sure we're going to be collaborating, because my thing is, again, that this needs to be an ongoing conversation and some for us to reach and work towards some solutions as well. And we're just going to have to do a lot of the behind the scenes work and grind. So please, again, let me know if there's some way, if y'all need me to stuff envelopes, make phone calls, if it's some initiative that you need promoted. Y'all know I'm all about my community and my people, and mainly getting the word out here about, because we do perish for lack of knowledge. We really do. A lot of times we have the resources, as I said, as far as, within our circle of network of people, we know attorneys, we know teachers, we know doctors, we know painters, we know writers, we know all of that. So I'm really into like us using and utilizing each other. So I appreciate you guys again.
All right. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you. Have a good night.
All right. You too.